Loneliness can often leave you with this deep sense of void, and many of us tend to gravitate towards compulsive behaviors or addictions to try and stifle out these emotions, to try and distract ourselves from having to deal with the inner hurt. Now, some of us may end up doing this unconsciously, not even aware that we have these deep-seated emotions. But is this really the answer? The key lies in coming face to face with these emotions, to sit with them and process through the lack of self-confidence, the lack of self-acceptance, the inner hurt that is so much troubling us. And sometimes it's going to take a lot of work, but when we are able to get through the processing of these emotions, we can come out on the other side free from a lot of these addictions and compulsive behaviors that are only sucking energy out of our life and putting us in worse and worse predicaments and becoming more and more unconscious to life itself. They may fill you with this temporary sense of reprieve or this temporary sense of joy, but there's no sustenance to it. Eventually, it sucks you dry of your energy and leaves you feeling way worse off. We're all looking for those quick fixes, those instant solutions. Unfortunately, a lot of these solutions are band-aid solutions. They only mask the symptoms. They do nothing to address the underlying emotions. And that's how these compulsive or addictive behaviors tend to function. Just like band-aid solutions, doing absolutely nothing to delve into the root cause of the problem. And these compulsive behaviors or addictions, they only tend to drive us deeper and deeper into the unconscious, building up layers and layers of unconscious behavior that we later on have to peel through to try and get to the root cause of the problem. Now, what are some of these compulsive or addictive behaviors that I'm talking about? Many of us are familiar with the drugs, the alcohol, all those very bad, nasty things, and we often associate that with addictive behaviors. But this goes beyond that. Maybe it's sweet foods, sugary treats. Sure, those are easy to identify because societally, we know that those tend to be the addictive things, the smoking, the drinking, sweet food addictions, junk food addictions. But there are others that are out there. Things that we gravitate to, and we tend to do them compulsively. So think about, even if it's healthy treats, like if you're addicted to certain fruits and you only eat that type of fruit and you tend to consume it excessively, these are all examples of compulsive behavior. Think about shopping. I know I used to go onto Amazon all the time, and oftentimes it used to be so unconscious. Because why? I was addicted to having a package being delivered outside my door, because it used to fill me with that little sense of joy of receiving something. But at the end of the month, when I look at my bill and I wonder where all the money has gone and that energy leakage that takes place through that was nothing but a compulsive behavior to try and hide the underlying emotions of loneliness and lack of self-worth that I was just distracting myself with through these addictive shopping habits. So there can be a multitude of things. It can be healthy habits that you tend to do excessively. I delved into a binge eating scenario of eating so many things which I considered healthy, but consuming them excessively. Always feeling that deep sense of hunger, eating so much to the point that I felt so full that I couldn't even realize that I was acting in such a way that I was trying to really stifle emotions rather than eating for nutrition. So it's about trying to step away from it and take a look at our behaviors and try and identify what are those compulsive or addictive behaviors that my mind is constantly gravitating to in order to prevent myself from having to deal with those underlying emotions. So that is the first step, is to identify those compulsive behaviors that are holding you back from healing the underlying feelings that are keeping you in the state of loneliness. Okay, so you've done all the work. You've identified the compulsive behaviors and addictions, and well done on that, because it's not easy identifying those. Being able to get into that situation of identifying calls for a lot of awareness. So well done on getting to that stage of bringing awareness to your behaviors. Now it's for the next step. What do you do once you've identified these? What do you do once you've eliminated all these compulsive behaviors? How do you address these underlying emotions? How do you sit with them and process through them? Because oftentimes they hidden behind those many layers that I mentioned. How do we get to that? I know for myself it's so deep that even if I just sit with it, it tends to become so burdensome because I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to process, how to even get beyond some of the top layers. So the solution here is to do practices that bring more awareness to help you delve deeper into it. So some of the things that I found really helpful is journaling, trying to journal through what you're feeling. What am I feeling? Sit with the emotions. What are the thoughts that come up when you avoid the compulsive behaviors? Try and meditate if that's something that comes easier to you. Try and find a time in your day to meditate and delve into these emotions. Try and bring more awareness to it. Try and feel through these emotions. Try and understand, why am I going through compulsive behaviors? What are these things that I'm trying to lack? What is that inner hurt? Where is that lack of self-worth coming from? And it's not necessary to identify the initial trigger in your life that gave rise to it, but it's to try and understand what is it that is making you gravitate towards these foods. What is it behind the loneliness? Is it a sense of lack of self-worth? Why are we unable to step into that authenticity? What are those emotions that are holding us back from being able to be comfortable with who we are, to walk into society and not have to care about what other people think about us, to be able to walk without that sense of self-judgment? And it's not easy, especially if we've gone through life where we've become so vulnerable, and we've become so vulnerable to the opinions of others that we're unable to take that center of attention away from our insecurities. Because there's so many people in this world, and it's highly likely that everyone is focused on themselves. But yet, because we are filled with so much insecurity, we place that spotlight of attention on ourselves rather than being willing to accept who we are and not worry about what other people are thinking. Because everyone has their own problems. They probably not even thinking about you. Not that important for them to even be thinking about it. So what if you are weird? So what if you step into your authenticity? Be willing to embrace it. Be willing to delve into these emotions, because that's going to help you step out into this world as a better version of yourself, and to overcome loneliness right from the root, to try and delve into these other practices rather than trying to gravitate towards compulsive or addictive behaviors to process through emotions. So for most of my life, I've been gravitating towards addictive behaviors, compulsive behaviors, as a means to try and stifle these emotions. And it's not just one thing. It's not just shopping. It's not just food. It's so many different types of things, whether it be movies, video games. I always used to get so addicted to it. I could sit for days at a time just playing a video game, not even bothering to eat or anything. And when I realized that I was using video games and it was starting to become unhealthy and have other detrimental effects on my life, I started to gravitate towards other things. It was just a natural occurrence in my life that I constantly gravitated to some or other addictive behaviors. And the funny thing is, when we bring awareness and we recognize these addictive behaviors, but we're not sure what is lying behind it, and we tend to think, okay, I've addressed this addictive behavior. I'm no longer watching video games. And there was a time when I had enough of it. It became like a sinkhole of my time where I used to be playing video games all the time as a child. And I never bothered with anything else. And that was my way of coping with the isolation, coping with the lack of friendship, to try and just delve into these video games, playing them at hours at a time. And so finally, when I broke free from this habit, I started to gravitate towards other things. Be it food, sometimes junk food. I used to eat compulsively. I used to always be having cereals. My parents used to think, oh, this child is so hungry. Meanwhile, it was just a coping mechanism. I used to always gravitate towards cereals. And even if it's so-called healthy cereals, I used to gravitate for a cereal called Pronutro in South Africa. I used to finish boxes at a time. People think, oh, Pronutro, it's healthy. But if you're consuming it excessively, it's probably not that healthy. And that was my lifestyle, is I just constantly gravitate towards these foods as a coping mechanism. Like I said, it doesn't always need to be these unhealthy things. I finally gave up on my cereal addiction and I gravitated towards other addictions. I started getting caught up with series, watching so-called Netflix series. I used to watch these series and finish them within a short space of time because I used to start at like 4 in the afternoon and finish at like 6 a.m. the next morning, just watching them in sequence, not even having any breaks in between. It became like such deep compulsive behaviors to try and shut out these feelings of loneliness. And sometimes you may feel that you have those connections, but they're not those deep, meaningful connections. And because they're not the deep, meaningful connections, they still leave you with that sense of void. And you're thinking, but wait a minute, I have friends, but they're not the deep, meaningful connections. So you still have that feeling of void and you're still trying to stifle these feelings with all these addictive behaviors. And they lead us nowhere. They don't take us forward in life. They leave us with the same insecurities, just being pushed down deeper, but still there. Oftentimes just having an effect, a detrimental effect on other aspects of your life. So it's something that we need to be mindful of, and something that I had been so bad at because I kept on gravitating towards different addictions. And even after I developed all these health issues with acid reflux and hypothyroid, I started gravitating towards these healthy foods. I even became addicted to fruits at one time. And I'm sure if you ever have to speak to my parents, they will tell you, this child, I can't understand why he's eating so much. And I used to just feel hungry all the time and consume it excessively, become addicted even to fruit sugars. And all these even healthy behaviors tend to have a very adverse effect on us because we do it in excess and anything we ascribe too much to. So I used to be this type of person that used to delve into a rabbit hole of health and start to put so much of excess importance to it that I used to, even if I was following something strictly, I would become obsessed with it. And because of that obsession created such an energetic imbalance, none of these modalities actually work because it was just another way of reflecting this addictive or compulsive behavior. And it's hard to be able to take that step back and reflect on it because even now it's about trying to bring that sense of balance, trying to bring in those more mindful activities to try and delve deeper into these underlying scenarios. And yes, there's coping mechanisms. There are things that are much more healthier. There was a time in my life when I had a pet dog, and dogs are so full of compassion, and I think that made such a fundamental difference, and it helps to process through these. I'm not trying to tell you you should go out there and get a dog. I absolutely love dogs, and I think they bring in a lot of compassion and awareness, but when you're dealing with these deep-seated insecurities, you gotta do the work. And that is something that I so much neglected during those earlier stages of my life. And now when I'm an adult, I'm finally starting to realize that the importance is about taking that step back and doing the work to delve deeper into it, to process through these emotions. Some call it shadow work, whatever you want to call it. It's about going and delving into these emotions. Set yourself free from it so that when you step out that door, you're stepping into your authentic self. You don't end up caring about the opinions of others. I was very, very susceptible to the opinions of others. If someone told me a bad comment, that comment will linger within my mind for weeks, months. It used to eventually start to define my very self. That's how vulnerable I'd become to the opinions of others. And I'm not saying I'm completely free of it, but by bringing more awareness to it, we can recognize that you don't need to be taking on that emotional burden. You don't need to be so harsh on yourself. You can step back into that self-love to go through all this and to finally come out there. And the only reason I'm sharing a lot of this with you is that you can recognize that I'm not coming at you from the point of view of trying to lecture you through what I've gone through. I'm trying to walk through this journey and take you along with it. If you're someone that's also suffering from this, that you can come along with me on this journey and not have to deal through it alone, whether it's through a virtual manner, via video, or whatever it is. You're not alone on this journey. It's something that many of us are facing. And it's about having that compassion and kindness for each other. And like I said, the most important thing is to do the work. Do that inner work, do the inner healing. And finally we'll get there. We'll get to that point where we are able to embrace our authentic selves, and we can pour out from a cup that is full of love and share that love with everyone else in our lives. So with that, thank you so much for watching. If any of this content resonated with you, please do like, share, and subscribe, and do all those other great things. And with that, I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.